Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. It is 7:40 a.m. out here in Los Angeles. It is early for me because the G League decided to throw my world on its head yesterday. I was planning on doing a Thursday podcast with this guy. He was so gracious to go on ahead and transfer it to Friday because he's a great guy. It's Dave DuFour. Dave, tell the people what you've got going on in your life before we get started here. I want to give the floor to you because you're constantly changing what's going on in your life.
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of making jokes on Twitter all the time right now while I'm watching games. That's it. Watching a ton of basketball. I've got my podcast on the NBA with Dave DuFour, and that's it. Watching as much basketball as possible, and staying up too late because I'm now Central Time, and it's just brutal. It's brutal.
Yeah, it was funny. Yesterday, one of the people I was trying to get on the phone with, because Arizona shifts sometimes between Mountain Time and Pacific Time, don't they?
They don't have daylight savings.
Yeah, I was so confused on, is it Pacific? Is it Mountain Time right now?
Right.
And ended up, one of the reasons we had to shift it today is because I ended up misscheduling a call with someone. And oh my God, I don't know how you dealt with that. I feel like Central Time is just better for the consistency for you now.
No, I loved not having daylight savings time to think about it. And then being in Arizona and on Pacific Time was fantastic. I'm missing games ending at 9:30. It's gonna be a rough year. This staying up until midnight watching games and then getting up the next morning and doing my synergy sessions. It's gonna take some work. I may just skip the late games and then watch them the next day.
I think that's probably the best way to do it. We're presented by Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say it's a great problem to have. Oh, I got to figure out when I'm gonna watch all this basketball for my job.
I know. We're presented by CLNS Media. Today's sponsors are RX Bar and DraftKings. We're gonna jump in here and we're gonna talk about just kind of everything we've seen from the first 2 full days of the NBA calendar. We talked about opening night with Dieter Kurtenbach on Wednesday. We're going to talk a little bit more about what we've seen on Wednesday and Thursday here. I think we're going to start, with the last game that just previously happened last night with the Los Angeles Lakers. LeBron James, his opening night game. The Blazers obviously came out with a lot of energy due to the passing of Paul Allen. It was a very interesting game, I thought, in a lot of ways. It gave us a lot of insight into the way that those two teams are going to look, and it gave us a lot of insight into how the Lakers will operate versus how the bench of Portland is going to operate. And obviously, LeBron is always going to be the big story whenever he takes the floor in his first game for a new team, but Nick Stauskas kind of stole the show.
He was fantastic. And, it's funny, working with CJ and Dame, I just thought he had so much space, had great chemistry with Myers Leonard. Myers Leonard was just facilitating out of the post. It was really interesting to me how good Stauskas looked. And even defensively, he did a job staying with his man, felt the screens coming. I don't know. Either I haven't watched enough Stauskas and I had this opinion of him that wasn't accurate, or Stauskas is a bit of a different player, or for one game was a bit of a different player.
I think it was probably for one game. I'm going to be honest. He shot ridiculously well. But they were
open shots, and I know he can hit them.
Yeah, he can hit the shots for sure. I will say, this is something that Andy Glockner brought up to me on Twitter. In his Philly days, in his Sacramento days, you saw him miss left to right, and you saw him have very inconsistent misses, even because of just what seemed like a lack of confidence in his stroke. That seems to be gone. It does seem to be a situation where he is just shooting with confidence. Last night, he was on one, and it didn't matter where he's pulling up from. It was going in. But I'll be interested to see at what level that confidence settles at, right? Does he become a consistent 40% three-point shooter? I think that would be great to see. I would love it if Nick Stauskas becomes an NBA player, because everyone says he's an incredibly nice guy.
Yeah, you could tell in the post-game interview that Dame really likes the guy. I think that he could really help this team, too. He's kind of what they're missing, is a wing that can shoot and not get destroyed on defense. Again, this is the one-game reaction. So I'll temper my expectations, but if he's going to be able to shoot 38 to 42%, let's say, then he should play over Evan Turner because he offers more value for them in that sort of wing position. And I think he could also play a little bit of 4 when they want to go small.
Yeah, I think that's right. Before we get into the Lakers, I do want to point out something as well that struck me. It was the Blazers' closing lineup. I thought was really interesting, and part of it, I'm sure, was due to the fact that Stauskas was as hot as he was. Stauskas is not going to close every game, obviously, but they closed with a lineup of Dame and CJ, Stauskas, Al-Farouq Aminu, and Zach Collins. I was pretty surprised that Collins ended up closing. He was awesome last night, by the way. He had 6 blocks. He was affecting everything by the rim. He looked really, really mobile, but I'll be interested to see if it continues to be a situation where they gave Yusuf Nurkic all this money in the summer. I think it was a 3-year, $39 million deal in terms of what's guaranteed. And they already have Zach Collins like closing games and stealing his minutes. Like, I don't know how tenable that situation is.
Well, Nurk was not good last night.
No.
He was terrible, especially around the basket. And so I think they went with the hot hand because Zach Collins was so good last night. Even offensively, I mean, he had some really nice post-up possessions. But I think long-term, they probably still view him as a 4, which I think is a mistake. I think his real value is at the 5. So if this, again, it's one game, but if this is what Zach Collins is going to be, he's not going to average 6 blocks a game, but if he's going to be a rim protector, guy who can move his feet on a switch and actually, hang, I think that Nurkic contract looks bad immediately. Now, I'm also of the opinion that Nurkic contract looked bad the second he signed it. Yeah, because there was no value of signing Nurkic. He's not a franchise type of center. Like, he's not a Jokic or an Embiid or something like that. And they already had all these these contracts that they want to get off the books, and all they've done is tie up more money into a longer contract that they're going to struggle to move. And I mean, that's kind of their MO. And you see a path where they could have gotten themselves out of it, and what they did was re-sign Nurkic. So it's I don't know. I guess it's a good problem to have that you've got good players potentially, but at the same time, there are the economic realities, and you've wasted money potentially if Zach Collins is going to be this guy.
Yeah, and we'll be interested to see if Zach Collins continues to be as useful as he was last night. But it was a good win for Portland. It was the kind of win that they need to continue to bank early in the season, just because, this is a rough and tumble Western Conference. Banking these wins early in the season plays a huge role in where you finish at the end of the season. And Portland is a team that, coming into the year, I certainly have some skepticism about. I think that they lost a lot of depth, and that proved to be wrong on opening night at least, but we'll see if that continues going forward. I think they lost a lot of defensive acumen with Ed Davis. They lost a lot of toughness, and maybe Damian and CJ saved them at the end of the day, but we'll see. I still have questions about this Portland team, but banking a win against one of their competitors in the Western Conference is a big deal.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Lakers. The Lakers, just kind of thoughts, I guess. We'll start there because LeBron was very, very good, obviously. He had the kind of game that we would expect him to start with. The turnover problem existed for him. It looked like he was not entirely sure where his teammates were yet. The fact that the floor is so condensed for them is a problem. This was a bad matchup for this Los Angeles Lakers team early in the season due to the way that Terry Stotts kind of structures this defense. They kind of force everything toward the middle, and they're happy to have you take contested shots at the basket and take contested shots from the 15-foot and in range. That's just kind of the way that their defense works. It's a bit of it's a defense that kind of just allows that small amount of penetration because they sink back on pick and roll coverage pretty consistently. So I guess that I don't want to take too much away from this. I am comfortable just saying, hey, this was a road game for the Los Angeles Lakers. They lost it to a good team, and we'll see where it goes from here.
I mean, I think these teams are closer than a lot of people think. Yeah. But that Portland is still quite a bit better.
Right now, I would agree with that.
Right, exactly. Today. And all of, let me just kind of couch every statement I make. Every statement I make is about right now. So if you guys go to Twitter and you see that I say Josh Hart is the best of the young guys, I mean today. I'm not. I don't like to project too far out. Like
that is a take that we're going to get into in a second here. By the way.
Well, I understand that Brandon Ingram has this huge ceiling and this huge upside, but I can't give you analysis based on what's happening on the court and say, but it's okay because he's gonna hit this theoretical ceiling. Like, how many guys have we said that about who never hit it? And Brandon Ingram has been objectively bad. I mean, he was objectively horrible his rookie year. Yeah. And he was bad for most of last year, and he was at his best when he had the ball in his hands. And now he's not going to have the ball in his hands much, so they're actually taking away what I thought was the right path for him. And I still think Brandon Ingram winds up being a really good player, but the path there just got more difficult because of the personnel. But anyway, so they're not a good team today. They don't have any shooting. And exactly what happened last night. Now, they missed a ton of shots last night, and they won't shoot that poorly. They're not going to be a 25% or whatever it was 3-point shooting team on the year. But at the same time, they are going to struggle. And defenses are going to be able to pack the paint, and they're going to dare them to shoot. I mean, they weren't even guarding Lonzo.
That's a big problem that we're going to get into here in a second, because I am a little bit concerned about Lonzo's role here on this team already.
I think he's a trade asset.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second, but I want to talk about Josh Hart, because I agree with you last night. He was the best player of the young guys last night. He was their second best player last night. Right. Just overall. Maybe Rondo. Rondo, I thought, actually played pretty reasonably well. The
First half, he was great.
Yeah, the defense is still going to be an issue. That's how Portland's guards got off like they did. But he did really well meshing with LeBron James, both in the open floor and getting the Lakers in and out of their sets early in the game. I agree with you.
Yeah. But I also think that right now he's the best of the young guys. I think he should be starting.
Josh Hart, you mean? Yes.
Yeah. And I think that Rondo's probably the second best player on the Lakers today, but if we're going to factor in defense for a team that really needs the defense, then I think Josh Hart is more important. Because not only can he knock down a three, which is something that they're going to struggle with, but he can defend his position. He's not going to die on switches. He's not going to lazy switch the way Rondo does. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big fan of Rondo on offense. I think he cracks me up with the assist chasing and all that stuff.
I didn't think he was that bad with that last night.
No, he wasn't. He actually went up with the ball some. So yeah. But
you probably don't want a situation where the touch numbers are like LeBron James 74, Rajon Rondo 72 over the course of a game. Like, you probably
is that what it was last night?
Yeah, you probably want it to be a little bit more tilted toward LeBron's side. Maybe you want some of those touches going to Brandon, because eventually you are going to need him to take on some of this secondary load in terms of handling the ball. But yeah, like, I thought it wasn't the typical deal where Rondo sometimes gets into his own world where he's chasing assists.
Okay. Yeah. No, I agree. Again, he was really good in the first half of that game. The reason that it was so close, it was all Rondo. So I don't know, man. I think they're an interesting team that is not really built to win right now. Yeah. Unfortunately. I thought they looked at their best when it was LeBron and the young guns. I thought that was the best lineup that they rolled out there. I know Lonzo's still on minutes restriction, but I agree with you. I think his role, it's very nebulous. I don't know what he's going to do.
So, yes, I agree with that. Lonzo was bad last night. Part of me wants to wait until we see more, and we see him get 100% healthy. We see him maybe practice a little bit more with this group and get a little bit more comfortable with them on the floor, because Lonzo is definitely a player where you're going to get the best out of him if he has chemistry and synergy with everyone else on the floor, right? And so far, just due to the way his preseason was stunted, I don't think that exists yet. And you know what? It's worth calling out that he and Lance Stevenson were the two worst players for the Lakers last night. Lance is not good, but Lonzo Ball, in their minutes on the floor last night, they were a 85.4 offensive rating, 121.7 defensive rating, -36 net rating. And that stands up to me. Defenses just did not give a shit if he shot the ball. Like they were like, fine, fucking shoot it. Whatever, man.
Yeah.
We don't think it's going to go in. And that really hindered the spacing on the floor for the Lakers. It really just clogged everything up. And again, that's what Portland wants to do anyway. But this was a significant example of that being a question mark going forward.
It also negates his passing to a degree.
It does.
The defenders can just sag off and cut off those angles. And
for sure.
I think that there's this, again, this is another thing that just kind of in general we all do. It's like, well, he's young, he'll figure it out. Well, not necessarily. How many guys come into the league not being able to shoot and wind up as shooters? So listen, I know that he had that one good year at UCLA, but all of his numbers in high school weren't good.
They weren't I will say this, they weren't that bad given the quality of shot, though.
Right.
That he took. Like, everything was so clouded with Lonzo because he ran that bullshit, like, up and down
exactly.
LeVar scheme that was more synonymous with Grinnell basketball in Division II than it was with anything anyone ever sees on a competitive basketball landscape. So, like, look, I'm not as down on Lonzo becoming an eventual shooter as I think some people are. I think he has really good touch. And I will be interested to see if the jump shot makes an adjustment now that he seems to have put on weight, because, you're someone you've probably taught this before, but like having more strength throughout your body, it affects your shot, and it honestly makes you a better shooter because it kind of makes muscle memory and muscle mechanics a little bit more repeatable. So if Lonzo can get to that stage, I think that there is potential there. But it's going to take a while for him to adjust to this new body that he has, where he seriously has put on quite a bit of weight.
Well, and like looking at him, you see the upper body increase, but I really care about the lower body. Like, this is why Steph Curry has in the gym range. Having a strong lower body, and not to get too nerdy about shooting, but having a strong lower body makes it so your form doesn't break down as you increase your range. Now, unfortunately, with Lonzo, he's got a broken form. But the hope for me would be that it's going to be easier to alter his form because he's not going to have to generate power with his arms the way he does. That's why he shoots how he does, because he was taking deep shots before his body was ready. Yeah. And it was like a little kid having terrible form just to get the ball there. And so I think that if they will build the base, then they can actually adjust the form, and he'll have good range. I mean, he's a big kid, like he's 6'6". Yeah. And he's obviously thick. I mean, you look at his dad, like he's probably got the genetics. It's not going to be a big deal, but it's going to take work. And the number one thing, man, is like some humility on it. Like, I know that this doesn't work and I need to do it. I think the Lakers need to be honest with him about it and say, look, this isn't going to work. We need you to do this. But unfortunately, it's hard to do and also play basketball. It's something that takes – the reason it takes so long, like, for guys like MKG and potentially Lonzo to change their shot is because you have to be able to go out and play basketball games. And so if you're tinkering with your shot, you're not going to come in with this new form. You're going to go back to what you know. Yep. And so it takes time. I mean, this is something like when they're out of the playoffs or out after the regular season, like, you got to go into the gym immediately, and we're going to do shot reconstruction, and you're going to be doing this shot, and you won't scrimmage until training camp. I mean, you're talking like 4 or 5 months where it's just conditioning and shooting, and that's it. And that's tough to do when you're in the NBA because you can lose a step, like a mental step. So, yeah, no question. Let's move on. I think that we've talked enough about the Lakers now. They're gonna make a huge trade for shooting, and people are gonna say, "Aha! This was the plan all along." They're gonna trade like Brandon Ingram. And I mean, like, I don't know if they're going to trade Brandon, but I don't think they're going to. I think they are going to make a trade for shooting. I agree with that. Oh yeah, they have to. Yeah, they have to. Before we move on, though, Dave, we've got to pay some bills. RX Bar is a whole food protein bar. Their bars are made with real whole ingredients. They want to be transparent and upfront with their customers, which is why they label the core ingredients on the front and the flavor components on the back. Beyond being a go-to snack that checks off a number of nutritional boxes, RX bars actually taste delicious. They found that creating a bar made from real whole food ingredients actually tastes better than anything else out there. They don't need fillers, additives, or chemicals. They just need the whole food ingredients that they use. RX Bar wants to build things the right way. They believe in the power of transparency. Those core ingredients
listed on the package. They really are everything that is in here, because it turns out that whole food ingredients really taste great. They're gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, whether you like sweet or savory, chocolate or fruit flavors. There's definitely an RX bar for you. Egg white protein stands out as the source of protein that is easy for your body to absorb. That is why they use it significantly in RX bars. They come in 14 delicious flavor varieties. They have some seasonal flavors as well. And of course, it's worth mentioning that they have debuted RX nut butter, which also includes honey, cinnamon, peanut butter, and vanilla almond butter. I'm a big fan of the RX bar. I just take it on flights all the time, as I've mentioned to you guys in the past. And I've got an offer for you. For 25% off of your first order, visit rxbar.com/game theory. That's GAMETHEORY. Enter that promo code Game Theory at checkout, and you're going to get 25% off that first RX bar order. rxbar.com/game theory. Our second sponsor today, DraftKings. You guys know how much I love DraftKings. It is a great way to just kind of, scratch that itch that I have to occasionally bet on games without betting on games. Basketball season's finally back, and because of that, DraftKings is back. They're giving away over $400 million in prizes this season. That's more than 10 times than what the Lakers are paying LeBron James, after we talked about him early on in this episode. But no matter what your skill level is, there's a contest waiting for you at DraftKings. Drafting your team is simple. Just select 8 players and stay under the $50,000 cap. Earn points when your players score, assist, block, rebound, and more. And the best part is that you get to draft a new team every single day without commitment. Download the app or head over to DraftKings.com now and use my code THEORY, that's THEORY, to support the show and play free with your first deposit. And remember, there are going to be $400 million in total prizes up for grabs throughout the season. That's code THEORY, THEORY, to play for free with your first deposit only at DraftKings. There's a minimum $5 deposit required. That's nothing. That's, less than a cup of coffee out here in Los Angeles, at least. Maybe not a cup of coffee down in Texas for Dave. But eligibility restrictions apply. Go to DraftKings.com for details. Dave, let's move on. Let's talk about the Bucks next. The Bucks were one of the most interesting teams I saw on opening night. Part of the reason for that was their shot distribution. If you look at their shot charts on...
I posted their shot chart on my Twitter feed.
Oh, did you really?
Morning. I did.
It was.
I'm glad we both felt the same way.
Yeah, it was 3 shots outside of the paint. I can actually name those shots, too, off the top of my head. I believe that one was Ersan Ilyasova on a turnaround. One was... I forget who the second one was. Another one was like a turnaround jumper from like the mid-post area. And then another was like a pull-up elbow jumper from like 18 feet from Malcolm Brogdon. I loved this in every way. They ran just like spread offense, high screen and roll, or dump it into Giannis and let defense collapse and kick out instead of trying to, score in the post. They used Giannis as a hub instead of using him to try and create separation and, get these mid-range jumpers up like he is so often done under Jason Kidd and Joe Prunty. It was spectacular. And like you could even see like the teachings of Mike Budenholzer early on in Chris Middleton, because he has a propensity to, take that 1 step, 2 steps in between the foul or in from the 3-point line and knock down that 20-footer. There were a couple times where like he looked like he wanted to do it, hesitated, and then stepped back and shot a 3. It was so fun to watch them just like kind of adjust on the fly to these new schematic involvements that Mike Budenholzer is, kind of putting upon them.
Yeah, listen, man, this was. It's funny because I don't think Giannis had a great game, and he had 25, 18, and 8, and
it was unbelievable.
They were so gassed. They were so gassed in the second half. I mean, you saw like middle of the third, they just kind of weren't able to get to like their threes. They weren't able to get them open. And they just almost stopped shooting threes. So imagine what this team is going to look like in a month when they're all conditioned and ready and experienced in the system. I do think that, man, this team might have a chance to win the East because the ceiling for Giannis is so high. I mean, the 3-ball looks good. He's going to have open shots because he's going to have shooters around him.
Yeah.
Dante DiVincenzo is a player. And I was making fun of the pick, but man, he's actually a player.
I'm also very excited for Bomani Jones's White Dante segments.
Oh, it was fantastic. I made my wife watch it because it was so funny. I was like, you got to watch this. Yeah, man, like putting Giannis in a position to succeed was fantastic. But the guy who really stood out to me, we know Giannis is great. And we know Chris Middleton is great, but Eric Bledsoe looked awesome. He looked confident. He looked in shape. And it was the most defensive activity I've seen out of him since he was in the Clippers. He was just fantastic in that first game. And so
he's still not great against screens. Like, he still can kind of die on the vine a little bit, but he did at least try. And that is a new sign.
I saw him. I mean, he did the hook and trail more in that game than probably did all last year.
Yes.
So, and again, some of this is schematic. Like, I mean, I used to coach, if you get caught on a screen, die on it and switch, right? So basically you lean into the screener so he's not able to roll. So I don't know what they were telling him to do, but I'm just making excuses to make my take seem better. But man, Bledsoe was good. And this wasn't just because he hit shots. I really was more keyed in for him on the defensive end. But yeah, man, I think they're going to be fun. I loved Giannis in the mid post. I mean, when he got Kemba on a switch and post him up, and you could just see. I mean, the Hornets started playing defense like their hair was on fire, and just they dropped everything. And then they ran DiVincenzo off a down screen from Henson, and he was just wide open right on the wing. I mean, it's just beautiful basketball.
Their out of time outsets were amazing too.
Right. Again. This is what happens when you take great talent like Giannis and Middleton. You surround them with solid players like DiVincenzo and Bledsoe and some of the other guys on this roster. I'm not going to sit and name the whole roster. Even Henson, I think is okay. Although
Ilyasova looked really good too.
Ilyasova is awesome. I think Henson needs to shoot those open threes when he's got them, but that's another thing.
And what my bet is too? I bet that Ersan has helped a lot of these guys with Budenholzer's offense too.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and he's gonna cut teams to death in this offense because he knows all the angles. But when you take great players, surround them with solid pros, and have great coaching, then you can make this sort of leap.
Yeah.
Similar to the Golden State Warriors, right? Great players, surround them with some good pros, upgrade the coaching, and all of a sudden you've got a championship contender. I'm not saying that this is going to be the 14-15 Warriors, but it's definitely, I think it's in play that this team could actually make the finals.
Maybe. I think they need one more piece.
I agree. I think they're one guy away.
Yeah, but we'll see. I think that is not like a wild opinion by any stretch. Like, this team looks really good. What scares me is the defensive side right now. They have the tools to be good on that side. Like, Chris Middleton's a good defender. Giannis is obviously crazy good. Brogdon is a smart defender. Tony Snell is a really good on-ball defender at the very least. So they have the pieces to be good there. Sterling Brown can be a multi-positional defender if he gets out of he gets in the rotation as well significantly. So, like, they have the pieces, but I'm a little bit worried about just teams kind of getting a parade to the rim and then them not being able to stop that. And, like, look, part of this is going to be new scheme, and they're trying to figure some stuff out. And like you said, they definitely ran out of gas in that game. It just seemed like they'd never played at that pace before as a group. But I don't know. I'm still a little bit worried about the defense. They did not look good on that end. And, like, I don't think Charlotte is like a game-breaking team or offensively necessarily outside of Kemba.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure who they can go get that would really solve some of their problems. But, yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch them and watch them grow. Kemba, though, is incredible. Yeah,
Kemba's unbelievable, and I want to make a point about Malik Monk. Malik Monk got some shots up, got 16
Super
shots
fly.
up.
Yes,
it was great. He had 18 points. He needs to do that, though, for them.
So I was really high on him last year, and then he had the ankle injury, and I'm Mr. Ankle Injury here. Like, I try to point out when guys have ankle injuries, they don't usually have great seasons.
Yeah.
It
was
affects
really
so
good
much.
late in the year, though.
Once he got healthy, he was fine. But Marcus Smart, I think some of Marcus Smart's shooting problems come from the fact that 3 out of 4 years in the league, he started the season with a bad ankle injury.
Yeah.
Steph Curry last year, remember, he had the little ankle tweak early, led to the knee issue, and then the ankle issue again. I mean, this is stuff that we just don't pay enough attention to. So a lot of people go around throwing the word bust out there because Malik Monk had a bad rookie year. First of all, he had a coach that didn't want to play him. He was struggling to be in shape because of the ankle, and the ankle wasn't stable. And then we saw last year he was pretty good. And game one, that's the Malik Monk I expected.
Yep.
A guy who can come in, get you 18 to 20 a game, Jamal Crawford style. Although, he's got crazy range, and he hits. I mean, some of the shots that guy can hit are just insane. I mean, he's a really good, tough shot maker. So, yeah, I'm high. I love Malik Monk, man. I love to see that from him the other night because it was a lot of fun. I can't wait to watch him and Kemba playing together. I think that they're going to open up new dimensions for each other.
Yeah, I agree with that. Let's move on to what might have been the most important development of opening night, I thought, and it was the Pelicans-Houston game. Houston looked atrocious defensively. Part of this is definitely that they are a bad match, or New Orleans is kind of a bad matchup for them, I think. They really can outrun you, and they can just pace you to death in every single way. That is a significant problem for a Houston team that can be a little bit slow. And you look at the pieces they brought in this summer. Like, James Ennis isn't a freak athlete necessarily. Carmelo Anthony's obviously extremely slow. Michael Carter-Williams hasn't exactly been the best transition defender throughout the course of his career. So, like, Gerald Green, again, like, not the best transition defender, especially whenever you're chucking up, like, 25-foot threes that clang off the backboard and start early fast breaks. Like, these things matter insofar as it was, again, a really, really difficult matchup for Houston, but their defense just didn't look good in the half court. And maybe it's early season stuff where they're just kind of playing themselves into shape, but New Orleans took it to them in a significant way.
Well, it's almost like Houston lost two really important defensive players, right. In particular, Trevor Ariza, who could stick the three as well on the other end. And even attack off the dribble some. So I watched that. I watched the film on that yesterday morning. I didn't watch the game live, but I watched the film because I wanted to see what happened. And the Pelicans their strategy was similar to what they did against New Orleans in the playoffs last year. Anybody could beat them except for James Harden and Chris Paul. So they weren't switching screens. They were dropping the big to prevent the drive to the lane, and they were bringing the guard through the screen. That's it. So when PJ Tucker was popping out, he was getting open looks and not making them. It's a good gamble to make. Now, PJ Tucker's a 37% three-point shooter. If he's going to hit that on the year, he's going to have some really big games. This is the blueprint for destroying the isolation offense that they've been so successful with. And we saw it with the Warriors in the end of that series. Just don't switch.
Yeah.
Right? That's it. And then, on the other end, when they tried to switch, New Orleans cut them to death.
Yeah.
And so, when you don't have the personnel to sort of make adjustments and you're forced to switch because you've got Carmelo out there and, some other less than great defensive players, then that's going to be trouble. And I've been on my bullhorn all summer saying that losing Ariza and Bahamute is a huge deal for this team. They're not the second best team in the West anymore. They're behind Utah at a minimum. They might be behind Denver. I don't know. The defense is why they were special last year. The offense they're going to have, and they're going to score, and James Harden's going to be great, and Chris Paul is going to be great. But the defense, having a top 10 defense is important if you actually want to compete for a title.
So one thing that game showed me was how much Houston kind of lived on the edge in terms of like just sheer athleticism last year, because they got out the pace and ran a little bit. Like, look, if you look at their pace numbers, it's going to be relatively high last year, but like this is a team at its best, like you said, kind of ISOing in the half court and getting a great shot distribution from James Harden and Chris Paul and getting easy, effective, efficient transition opportunities that they take high advantage of because of those players. Their lack of athleticism right now, in my opinion, by replacing Trevor Ariza with Carmelo Anthony. That's a significant issue, and it really showed up against New Orleans, who is one of the most athletic teams in the entire NBA. Like, you look at the way that Elfrid Payton and Drew Holiday can just get up and go. Julius Randle and grab and goes can really get up and go. Anthony Davis, obviously, just an unbelievable freak in that regard. They just out-athleted Houston in a way that kind of scares me going forward.
Well, I think they out-executed Houston also. You know, the offensive sets and stuff, like, they were very creative with Anthony Davis to get switches and to put him in position to succeed. Mirotic continuing the run he's been on since getting punched by Bobby Portis is pretty incredible.
By the way, how great has both of their turnarounds been?
Yeah.
Like, Bobby's been unbelievable since that moment. Mirotic has been great since that moment. It's been awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and Mirotic was even better once he got to New Orleans last year. I mean, he was instrumental in them beating Portland. So, and not just on the offensive end where we give him credit, but the guy works hard on the glass and actually, like, he tries on defense, and that stuff matters, right? And so, and adding Randall is just huge for them. Randall's now going to shoot threes. You know, it's something. I'm also high on Elfrid Payton this year because he cut his hair. So I think he's going to have a much better season. I know that sounds like a joke, but the truth is I think he's going to shoot better.
I love that.
I think he's going to shoot better because his hair's not in the way, you know? So, yeah, I think New Orleans looks really good. And if you told me New Orleans was going to be a top 4 seed in the West at the end of the year, I would not be shocked. I still think they need some wing help. You know, I'd love to see them be able to get a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. who can really, like, run the floor and shoot. That would be incredible. But, you know,
just another wing.
Right. I don't think Wesley Johnson's that guy, but at least he's a wing.
Yeah. One thing that Julius Randle helps them with as well, this wasn't a great rebounding team last year if you look at the numbers.
Right.
They were 20th in defensive rebounding rate, 28th in offensive rebounding rate, but that was more due to Alvin Gentry's scheme. Like, they're just not going to chase offensive rebounds, really. But I think that kind of improving that defensive rebounding rate, given the way that they can get up and go, getting a guy in Julius Randle who, over the last 3 years of his career, has proven himself to be one of the 10 best defensive rebounders in the game, in my opinion. He just chases the glass and goes every single time it hits it. Like, that's a big deal. That's a big deal for the way this offense runs. If they can just limit second chance opportunities and continue to turn defense to offense as quickly as they are capable of.
Yeah, the grab and goes are going to just be huge. And I'm here for Anthony Davis getting easy buckets because of it. You know, like, I think that's going to be a lot of fun. They're going to be fun to watch, man. And Drew Holiday being healthy, I just, they're going to be good. They're going to be real good.
The next team that we want to kind of dive into in a little bit of depth is Minnesota and San Antonio. San Antonio wins a home game against Minnesota. I was actually kind of impressed with the way that Minnesota at least clamped down and played. They fought and they battled on the perimeter. Karl Towns took 6 shots. That's not the recipe for them to have any sort of sustainable, lasting success on the offensive end. That's just being realistic about this thing. Because if you look at the list of players who shot more times than Karl Anthony Towns in that game for Minnesota, you get Jeff Teague, Andrew Wiggins, Jimmy Butler, Gorgie Dieng, Tyus Jones, and Derrick Rose. That is 6 guys taking more shots than your all-NBA offensive superstar center. I get that Karl Towns suffered foul trouble. He fouled out in 22 minutes, but you can't have 22 minutes where Karl Towns is only taking 6 shots. You just can't have it.
No, you can't. That's not a recipe for success. And I'm not the biggest Karl Anthony guy, but his offensive game is so special. I think that you've got to find a way to get him touches. Honestly, there's really not much more to say about that game for them, aside from the fact that Karl Anthony Towns took as many shots as he had fouls, and he fouled out. That's not good.
I will say this too, like, Jimmy Butler played a very strange game to me because there were times where it didn't really look like he wanted to involve his teammates. Like, he kind of wasn't really passing as much as what you typically see Jimmy do. Like, obviously he took 23 shots in a relatively limited 32-minute workload over the course of that game. So, like, it's obvious from the numbers that he wasn't really passing, but then you, like, go back and look, like, he wasn't 100% in on, like, sharing the ball with his teammates and playing an unselfish brand of basketball.
No. Well, but none of them were. Okay, so
yeah.
There really wasn't much ball movement going on.
Can I make a case for Andrew Wiggins? I thought he was fine.
He was fine. Actually, he was fine. I mean, they started the game. That game started with a terribly bricked Andrew Wiggins 3.
A turnover in the corner where Wiggins stepped out of bounds.
Yep. Karl Anthony Towns blew his assignment and then goaltended.
Yeah.
And it was just like, oh my God, I understand why Jimmy Butler is blowing his top. But
Wiggins came back and fought. Yeah.
See, here's one problem. I think that Wiggins is a 4, and I think that Taj kind of takes his spots. Like if I would want Wiggins to be in the post more, and I think you could do that with Karl Anthony Towns, right? So those two guys as your 4-5. Wiggins he's an okay passer out of the post, but he can really score out of the post. He's going to be quicker than any big guy you put on him, and he's going to be stronger than a lot of stretch fours. So
I've got a good number for you on that. Taj Gibson, in Taj's minutes, they had I believe hold on, let me find it. No, I don't have a good number. I was going to say that I felt like they played a lot better with Anthony Tolliver in the game versus Taj, but the numbers don't actually match that up. I'm a little bit surprised by that.
Yeah, but in one game, so here's where I'm at on the small sample size theater. I think one game, the eye test matters so much more. And I felt that they were better with Tolliver on the floor. But
I agree
again,
with that. Yeah.
The way that I would run them is I would go small, and Wiggins would be my 4, and we would just go that way. Not to mention defensively, his the opportunities for embarrassment are smaller. Like your defensive assignment is a 4, right? You can use some of that athleticism and have him come from the weak side and rim protect. There's a lot of stuff you can do.
He's not a bad on-ball defender either.
No,
the problem is when he has to chase dudes around and just gets lost off the ball.
Yeah, and I mean he watches the ball too much. But if he could be the weak side help, well then watching the ball is okay.
Yep.
Just don't get backdoor cut, which I guess that's a problem. I just talked myself out of it. But but yeah, I think that if Wiggins was playing the 4 and Karl Anthony Towns was playing the 5, you've got a much better flow going. But the truth is, 6 shots for Karl Anthony Towns just isn't going to cut it.
It's going to be hard for them. And look, they had a 112.5 offensive rating. We probably are overstating this a little bit. Their offense.
Nothing was easy.
Yeah.
Nothing was easy.
And it doesn't look sustainable without Karl
They did
Towns.
it last year. This is exactly how they played last year. And it was one of the reasons why I didn't think they had any chance when it got to the playoffs. They were like a blunt. They were a hammer on offense. It was like, we're going to just, everything is a nail, and we're going to hit everything really hard, and we're going to hope it works out.
Do we have any thoughts on San Antonio here before we move on?
No, I thought they looked good. I thought DeRozan looked great. And as of right now, through game 1, my 28 points a game for DeRozan is looking really good.
Yeah, I love the way he played. LaMarcus Aldridge didn't have his most efficient game, but man, did that dude just fight on the glass.
He played like a real, a good big man. It's something that we sort of saw last year in spurts. I mean, last year was, to me, his best season.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was more than spurts.
No, but but the way, the shot wasn't falling. And so instead of sort of fading back, he, really attacked the glass.
Yeah.
And I think that, this is the kind of guy that I believe San Antonio thought they were getting, but he wasn't that guy when he came in. I think he was a lot softer. And man, I loved it. That was like a throwback, old school big man performance. I mean, he really was all over everything. And then defensively, to the corner he's turned defensively has just been incredible.
Yeah, and last year, you bring up the offensive rebounding. Last year was his best offensive rebounding season since his rookie season. He did that again on Wednesday night. He had 8 offensive rebounds, if I remember correctly. He was I think he actually won them the game fighting and scrapping for those second chance opportunities because they outscored Minnesota, I believe, by 11 on the second chance opportunities. And he was the biggest part of that.
Yeah. I mean, he was great. He was great. I think that they're going to still make the playoffs, man.
I agree with that. Let's kind of bounce around a little bit quickly at this stage. Phoenix was another one of my teams that was very, very, very impressive in comparison to what we've seen from them in the past. I'm sorry. Igor Kokoshkov, the transition in terms of their ball movement offense is so immediately evident. They knocked down 19 threes in a game. Like, that is something that, this team last season, I believe, was the worst 3-point shooting team in the NBA. And, some of this is, small sample size again, but hey, I'm sorry, they were 26th. They were 30th. I got it right. They shot 33% from three last year. They were 26th in opponent 3-point percentage, which is another beast altogether. But they were actually a really, really bad shooting team last year, and they're a really good shooting team this year. Trevor Ariza knocked down 5 threes. Devin obviously was ridiculous. TJ Warren and Josh Jackson, their shots looked pretty good. That is incredibly important for how they're going to space the floor going forward. DeAndre Ayton looked great. He didn't take any of those bullshit fadeaway shots, any of those 3-pointers that are out of rhythm in the offense that he took sometimes at Arizona. 8 for 11 from the field, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and 18 points. If he does that, he is going to win Rookie of the Year, and he's probably going to get pretty darn close to all NBA votes, to be honest.
I think he's going to be 18 and 10.
Yeah,
I think that
was my prediction for this preseason too. I didn't think the assist numbers would come, and he wasn't great defensively. I will say that. Maybe all NBA for that performance is too strong. But,
I don't know, man. I think rookies are typically bad defensively, and so I'm not too concerned. I did see him recognize more stuff than I expected. The passing is fantastic, and an underrated aspect of his game is that he actually is a willing passer. He gets deep post position, and when the help comes, he looks to move the ball. And I think he could average 5 assists a game because of the way Kokoshkov is going to use him.
Maybe not this year, but at some point I agree with that.
Right. They had 35 assists on 44 made baskets. That's fantastic. I don't think they had more than 30 assists in a game last year.
They had one game with 35 assists last year.
There you go.
They had 0 games with 19 made 3-pointers last year. So this team is totally different. Igor Kokoshkov right now might be my favorite addition in terms of totally changing the way a team operates, because if you watch Phoenix at any point last year, that was a mess. That was just a total mess in terms of what they were running.
I'm going to give a lot of credit to Trevor Ariza and Ryan Anderson as well.
Yep. Coming
from the system that they were in, embracing quick decision making. You could see that. I mean, and the coaching staff is definitely a part of that. But embracing quick decision making, and it just goes to show when you've got good, young, talented players like Booker and Ayton, and you surround them with solid pros, that you can actually you can make a significant difference in one off season. And I mean, it's just one game again, but that actually look like a basketball team that's going to be fun to watch, but be competitive. And they may not make the playoffs, but I think they're going to be in it. I think they're going to be in that 8 to 10 range.
Yeah, I'm not real sure about that yet. I think that the West is just too good, but
we'll see.
Think they probably win 30s in terms of games now after seeing them. I think that they're probably mid 30s.
I think they're pushing 40.
I'm here for that. That's good.
Yeah.
What do we think of 40. Luka Doncic?
Looks out of shape. I mean, that's number one thing I'll say is that he looks out of shape.
I don't know if he looks out of shape for what we've seen from him in the past, though.
Sure. I mean, but he's also young.
Yeah. Compared to other NBA players, he looks out of shape. But
the offensive game is there. The offensive game is there. I still think he's a guy that I would have guarding 4s.
I agree with that.
Don't have him guarding wings. But I think he's going to be good. I mean, he was great until he got gassed in that game. And Carlisle is not going to tolerate that very long. So I do worry about him losing minutes because he's not in shape.
How about that bench, man? Ryan Brokoff, Maxi Kleber, J.J. Barea, Dwight Powell, Jalen Brunson, Devin Harris. It kind of worked. I'll say that.
Yeah, it kind of worked. I mean,
they went on a mini run at one point.
And they're going to shoot a lot of threes, so they're going to have a puncher's chance.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. That team, that was a struggle in game 1. Hopefully they turn it around, because I think they have potential to be really, really, really fun. Harrison Barnes coming back, I think, is actually going to really help them. That's a statement.
Harrison Barnes is good.
Harrison Barnes is a good player. I agree with that.
Okay.
But he's definitely more of a third or fourth guy on a team. And
oh, sure.
He will.
I think third banana, he's great.
Yeah, he will significantly help them. Toronto, Kawhi's first game, Kyle Lowry absolutely showed out in every single way. I think he dropped like 27 points on like a 101 true shooting percentage. Just a ridiculous game. That team looked really, really good, I thought. They out-depthed Cleveland. They showed the variety of different lineups that they can play. Jonas was shooting threes. Like, he knocked out or took 2 threes. He didn't knock down any, but like it actually looked okay. OG Anunoby left that game with an injury and only played 17 minutes. They closed with Serge Ibaka. Fred VanVleet was really, really solid. CJ Miles, only played 10 minutes for this team. And CJ Miles, to me, is like a sixth man on half the teams in the NBA. This is a really deep team that I think is just going to force all sorts of problems for opposing teams.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you kind of nailed it. They're going to be amazing. Kawhi Leonard obviously raises, he's the rising tide that's going to raise all the ships. When you get a transformational talent like that and you add it to what is already a good team, you're looking at a real finals contender, possible champion.
Can I bring up one guy, too, that I think kind of unleashes a lot of what they can do, if only for 20 to 25 minutes a night?
Yeah.
Pascal Siakam, man. That dude caused all sorts of issues for Kevin Love defensively. Like, he just didn't know what to do with the energy and length and athleticism when he was on the floor. Like, Kevin Love, that they were a -4 when Love was on the floor compared to, like, when everyone else was on the floor in the starting lineup. It was a significant struggle for Cleveland in that game. So he played fine, but like Kevin he just like looked at Pascal and was like, how do I work around this guy? How do I get around him? How do I get space against him? And then Pascal played a really, controlled, limited offensive game where he went 6 of 8 from the field and had 13 points. He's never going to be like some wild elite rebounder because he's skinny and can kind of get pushed out of position. But with Kawhi there, with Jonas, with Serge Ibaka, hopefully, that team's really, really good. He really unlocks a lot for them, I think.
They have so much versatility. They can go big, they can go small, they can go super small and even play Kawhi Leonard at the 5.
Yes, they can.
I mean, this is just an incredible team with a ton of length. OG and Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green as your 3 wings is just going to be a monster lineup. I mean, they can roll out Danny Green, OG Anunoby, Kawhi Leonard, Pascal Siakam, and Serge Ibaka, and that could be one of the best defensive lineups in the history of the NBA.
Like, here's my favorite. You could run Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, like Norman Powell, OG Anunoby, and Kawhi. Like you said, you can run super small and have requisite size that you need on the floor. It's going to be really fun to watch Nick Nurse kind of tinker and play with what's going to work for them this year. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's kind of bounce through some of these other games that were there. They existed. Atlanta was a mess. Oh boy, was Atlanta a mess. At one point, Trey Burke was screaming at Trae Young that he can't guard me, according to Christian Winfield from over at SB Nation. Alonzo Trier was dominating against Atlanta, and I love Alonzo Trier, but like, guy probably shouldn't be averaging 15 points a game. Tim Hardaway Jr. dropped 30 against them. Like, their defense was just a train wreck.
Yeah, I mean, but we kind of all expected it. It's not like this was a shock.
They gave up 49 points in the second quarter. I was not expecting that to the Knicks.
Well, I think the Knicks also got hot, and these things will happen, and the Hawks are going to be really bad. They're probably the worst team in the league. So, I'm not too disappointed.
And I will say this, the 126 number, this game was played at a pace that was just like insane. Like, you look at what their actual offensive rating was, it was 112.5. Like, you're not talking about the Knicks dropping 126 on like a 140 offensive rating. Atlanta at least like closed it down a little bit in the second half, but man, they badly need John Collins back to just give them like another for sure NBA player next to Taurean Prince.
Yeah, that'd be nice. That'd be nice. But they're a couple years away from doing anything.
Yeah. And shout out Alonzo Trier, undrafted guy, was absolutely awesome in that game. You being in Arizona last year, you probably saw how hard that guy works consistently day in, day out. Worked his ass off to get an NBA chance. He's on a 2-way deal. I would bet they have to convert that to a real deal at some point.
Oh, I guarantee it.
Because
I guarantee it.
He's really, really good. 15 points on 5 of 9 shooting, threw down a monster dunk as well. Kevin Knox wasn't super great, I didn't think, though.
He'll be okay. I still think he should start.
Yeah, probably true. The Brooklyn Nets lost by 3 to Detroit. Detroit's bigs just kind of dominated Brooklyn. Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond combined for 50 points. Drummond had 20 rebounds. Their guards, I think, didn't actually look great, but they're going to be a team that really needs both Stanley Johnson and Reggie Bullock to get healthy because, Bruce Brown was starting and Langston Galloway played 33 minutes. Just everyone was on a level that they probably shouldn't have been in terms of minute load, and getting guys like Johnson and getting Reggie Bullock back to really help take up that minute load will help them really improve, I think.
I did like the bully ball approach. I thought it worked.
It worked against Brooklyn for sure.
Right. I think that's something that they're going to be able to throw out. I want to see more Blake at the 5. With shooters around him, but they don't really have shooters. I still think that they need a point guard. I'd love to see Kemba wind up there. I think that could really be a good team. They're a few pieces away, but you can already see that Dwayne Casey has changed the culture quite a bit.
Brooklyn, I just want to point out, Spencer Dinwiddie was awesome, 23 points, 6 assists. Karis LeVert, 27 points.
My guy, Karis LeVert, was amazing.
Great in that game. He was really, really good. 4 assists, 4 rebounds. They kind of let him initiate a little bit as well, which was really fun to watch. And then Jared Allen was a monster. He had that thunderous block on Blake Griffin, but even outside of that play, he knocked down 2 threes. He had 17 points and 10 rebounds. He was just absolutely unbelievable. He looks like a legit, true center of the future for Brooklyn.
I own all of the Jared Allen stock.
I'm there with you. I am right there with you. The Heat and the Magic played. That was the messiest game I think I saw over the course of the first night. You saw the way that game closed. No one really wanted to win it, it seemed like. Goran Dragic, I think, continues to be maybe the most underrated player in the NBA. People talk about him like he's some trade fodder, and the guy was an all-star last year. He's really unbelievably talented. For Orlando, I loved the way that Mohamed Bamba played in Game 1, 13 points, 7 rebounds. Had a really nice face-up drive against... Who was it? I believe it was Kelly Olynyk, where you would think being 7 foot with a 7'10" wingspan, Kelly would probably have a quickness advantage on him, but he didn't. He just blew by first step from an elbow face up and went in for a layup. It was very, very impressive. Aaron Gordon was also just a monster. We saw a good shooting night for Aaron Gordon because he knocked down 4 of 5 from 3, but 26 points, 16 rebounds, brought the energy that you expect from a number 1 option in Orlando.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what Gordon can do this year. With a really good coach. Not that Vogel's a bad coach, but I think that Steve Clifford is just a little bit better and has a firmer grasp on the modern game.
Shout out to Willie Cauley-Stein for taking it to Rudy Gobert in a significant way. That was one of the most impressive and shocking things I saw on opening night. 23 points and 7 rebounds on 10 of 15 shooting. And he was going into Gobert's body and finishing up over and through him. Gobert played well. He had 19 points and 15 rebounds on offense, but we know the defense will be there for Gobert as well. But shout out Willie Cauley-Stein. Contract year Willie, man.
I'll tell you, Willie Cauley-Stein set some incredible screens in that game, was super active. I love that he stayed in his lane. And like you said, he took it to Gobert.
That's a big point. That's a great point because that's something he never used to do, was stay in his lane.
Yeah. And then, it helps that De'Aaron Fox is also really freaking good. That. He looked great. That makes a big difference, too. So, man, the Kings are going to be fun-ish.
Feisty, maybe is the
right.
best way to put it. Once Bogey comes back, too.
Right. They've got more pieces than people realize. It's just that it's a mess. They need to make a bunch of moves, but they don't have any leverage with which to make a bunch of moves because everyone knows they need to make a bunch of moves. So they're not going to compete this year, but they're going to have some guys that are fun to watch. And I'm pumped for Willie Cauley-Stein because I think that he can be a good player.
The Jazz won this game. Obviously, I want to point out Derek Favors as well. I think Derek Favors is another guy that doesn't get talked about enough as one of the most underrated great players in the NBA. Like, that guy might be one of the 50 best players in the NBA. And, like, nobody speaks about him as such because he kind of plays a little bit out of position. But whenever they sat Rudy for, like, a little stretch at the beginning of the fourth quarter, Derek took over that game, and, you know, he went 7 of 8 from the field. They ran the offense through him. He had 18 points and 9 rebounds. And he really kind of stretched the lead to a point where Sacramento just they struggled to come back at the end.
Yeah, man.
And he's a really good defender, too. I want to bring that up as well.
Yeah, Derek Favors, I think he's a starting 5 for whoever.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny that he decided to come back for one more year and then go back out next summer and get more money because he's going to get paid next summer. Make no doubt, someone is going to say this is the modern center, and he's just sitting there playing next to Gobert. Great defender, doesn't die on a switch, can shoot the 3 if he would just do it more. Yeah, man, I'm a huge fan of Derek Favors.
Our last 2 segments here are going to be, first, Boban. Discuss. Boban had one of his only incredibly valuable games for the Clippers this season. 18 points, 8 rebounds on 17 minutes and 51 seconds of action. He broke the rim with a dunk. Didn't look to be a mess defensively, at least when he was out there. Got tired eventually, but they couldn't close with him because of it. But like for that fourth quarter run where Denver had no idea what to do with him, shout out Boban.
Yeah, I mean, he's a monster, and to break the rim without leaving your feet is pretty special.
It was amazing. Boban is pretty special. Boban is my favorite player in the world.
Yeah, he's actually really good, and I love watching him play because a guy that size shouldn't actually have that much skill and touch, but he's fun.
He's genuinely unique.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I like players who are unique at the very least.
Right.
Also, real quick aside, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, move that guy into the starting lineup. He is maybe LA's best player.
Interesting.
That might be a take, but
that is a take.
That dude is unbelievable, I think. He is just special in the way that he's able to get separation. He's able to just kind of blow by whatever defender is in front of him due to his length and quickness combination. 11 points on 5 of 6 shooting, 4 assists, 2 rebounds in that game. He was really good. I thought maybe he's not better than Tobias Harris. That's a take. Tobias Harris is better than he is.
Yeah, Tobias is the best player there.
But like Shai is a good player who I think is probably their best backcourt player right now.
Okay. I mean, you know, I'll have to watch more.
Yeah. Lou Williams just gets destroyed defensively a bit too often for my taste. Final segment here. The best team I saw over the course of opening night. That was the Indiana Pacers. They dominated the Memphis Grizzlies. They absolutely took them to the woodshed. It was an ugly game based off of current pace and space standards and everything. But man, just the way that team defends, the way that they get kind of contributions from everyone across the board. They had 7 guys in double figures in that game. No one dropped 20 points. Bojan was their leading scorer, I believe, with 19. Victor Oladipo, they didn't even get like a great Vic night. He had 16, 5, and 5, but it didn't matter. Like, this team is just going to out-depth teams because whoever they have on the floor, it's always going to be a competent NBA player.
I agree, and their bench is probably the best in the league.
Yeah, it's them, it's Boston, and maybe Toronto.
Yeah, they're gonna be really, really good. The East is a lot better up top than people think. You know, there's this idea that LeBron left and now the East is just trash. I mean, there are 5 really solid teams. Toronto, Boston, Indy, Philly, and now Milwaukee. I think that it's gonna be a lot of fun to watch these guys kind of jockeying for position, and we're gonna get a different finals than we had the last 4 years, and that's gonna be fun too.
Yeah, I agree with that. Thaddeus Young and Miles Turner, when those 2 guys were on the floor, the Pacers had a 68.4 defensive rating and a 68.3 defensive rating, respectively. Those 2 are good. They're really good defenders. What did you think of the Miles Turner extension, by the way?
It could be an overpay. We'll see. It's early. I think he's going to have to defend better. This is something people don't realize because he blocks shots, but he's not really a good defender, and he's just can't have that.
Over-aggressive.
Right, but he's fantastic at blocking shots. but it's all the other stuff that's important. And so it may wind up being an overpay, but I'm okay with it. He's young, and you got to keep those guys if you're Indy.
I think based off of what he's done so far, it's probably more than like the level of play he's at now. But given his work ethic, given his emotional maturity in general, just like all of the little factors that go into decisions like this, I think he is absolutely going to be worth that contract and more, because it's just cleaning up, like you said, the little stuff. And I think he has the kind of mentality to do that and be successful.
One way or the other, it's not an egregious overpay.
I think it's always a tradable contract.
Exactly.
Which is a key for an Indiana team. They gave up, I think, $8 million of cap space to get this done next summer, but they have all of the cap space in the world next summer anyway. And Indiana, God love them, is in on the Pacers as anybody is this year, but not like a free agent destination. We can be real about that, right?
Yeah, that's not going to be a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a good move. I liked it. Is there anything else that you saw from the opening 2 nights that you want to mention? Do we want to talk about Chicago's defense, or do we just not want to end the podcast on a sad note like that? I
mean, listen, Chicago was always just going to be really bad, right? I'm just happy that they were able to score. Bobby Portis is going to get paid.
All about Bobby Portis Hive.
I think one of the best things to come out of that game was Zach LaVine looking to get guys involved.
Yeah,
that was
scoring
huge.
30.
Right. I mean, he was
unselfish 30.
Right, and he was actually trying to get guys touches. And I just think you gotta. I don't know, man. You got to take all this stuff and kind of warp it through a lens that makes a little bit more sense when you're considering the place in the league. And it could have gone a lot worse for them last night. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, so with Zach, I feel like he heard everyone talk about, including myself, because I was not a fan of the contract. But I think he heard everyone talk about the contract, and anyone who knows people around him will tell you that he works unbelievably hard at his game. And now that he's back from the ACL injury fully, we might get a 23 point a game like Zach LaVine this year. Whether or not it'll be super efficient, whether or not he starts to add the defensive side of the floor to his game, look, that stuff's all up for debate. But I think we're gonna get fuck you Zach LaVine season.
I agree. I think 23 is a little lower than I would guess.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be 25, 26.
He really might be. Dave, anything else? Anything else
it.
You want to mention? I think we went through it all.
I have nothing to plug.
Well, you're at least going to be on you were on the Nerder She Wrote podcast yesterday.
Yeah. I hosted it for Tom Haberstroh. It was fun. It was me and Coach Thorpe and Matt Moore from the Action Network, HP Basketball, for all of you guys that don't know his real name.
Yeah. So definitely go listen to that at least, because Dave does a great job. If you follow him on Twitter, you will see that he's watching every game. That's why I'm happy to have him on the podcast. He's fantastic.
Unfortunately, watching every game. I wish I could fake it. And I'm looking forward to figuring out a way to do that. I've been talking to people about how they schedule their time watching games. I'm gonna try to see the Orlando Magic once a month. That's my goal for this season. I want to watch 7 or 8 Magic game.
Yeah, I think the team that I watched least last year was probably Detroit, and I probably caught 7 or 8. That was the team. So if you can do that, it's going to be a successful season for you.
That's the goal.
Go subscribe to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. Go to theathletic.com/gametheory for 30% off of whatever subscription that you're looking to buy. Because if you get one subscription, you get access to everything at The Athletic. And it's a great product. It's a great website. So go to theathletic.com/gametheory. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. We will be back next week. Shout out to the sponsors, RX Bar and DraftKings. Until next time, though, we'll talk soon. Bye.